wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
In today's video, I want to chat with you guys about why it is I really don't mess with number crews especially, and kind of just why I don't mess with crews in general. And we're gonna do this by talking about the one numbers crew I used to be in that I never talk about, and that is TKO. Now, you might hear the name TKO and immediately think, oh man, yo, John must have been up like crazy. He had to be really out there. And let me temper your expectations. While yes, I did hit walls, and yes, I did go bombing, and I did my fair share of work, I always thought that, you know, the amount I did was more like you're just average dude. Not to the amount of anybody who's super special. Like, I didn't get up to that extent, and you really don't have to be in most numbers crews. And also, some of you guys might go ahead and think, oh, what? He was in TKO? That's crazy. Dude, that's so much respect right there. No, let me stop you right there. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is precisely why I never really put up TKO. It's why I never talk about it. It's why I even sometimes forget I was in the crew in the first place. And it's because just having the crew name under your belt doesn't do anything for you. And in any numbers crew, a crew that really cares about just putting as many people down as possible, those crews especially don't really bestow any respect on an individual. The individual is the one that gives the crew respect, not really the other way around. And it's also not really a two-way street. Now, because it's a numbers crew, pretty much anybody gets down as long as they have a spray can in their hand. So you don't even necessarily have to be good in order to be in most numbers crews. That's not really what they care about. They care about quantity, not really quality. And that is, after all, the whole name of the game when it comes to going out and getting up. So, you know, that is fair. But whenever I got into a crew, I always cared about the personal connection between me and the actual crewmates. And while on this channel we never promote doing illegal graffiti, I think it is important in order to kind of tell about the warnings that come along with it. So when you're in a numbers crew, the likelihood of getting snitched on skyrocket. And that's not to say that you don't get snitched on when you're in a more tightly knit crew. That's completely false, because it's oftentimes the ones closest to you that snitch on you. So with these numbers crews, especially the more popular ones, it feels more like you get in it and they hope that you're seeking validation from just having the crew name. Almost as if the crew name itself makes you feel fulfilled and validated to some extent, and that's reason enough for you to be in the crew. And for me, I never needed any validation. I don't need anybody's validation. So when I had the crew TKO behind me, it didn't do anything for me. How does that validate me? It doesn't. It doesn't. What is it doing? I wasn't close-knit with the people at the center of the crew. And that, at the end of the day, is really what matters. If you're in a numbers crew, once again, for you, the graffiti artists, the only reason to be in the crew is for validation. And that almost flies in the face of graffiti as a whole, because the whole point of graffiti was to do things on your terms because you wanted to, and the only person you cared about was yourself. And if you gained respect, it was for yourself and your close-knit friend. You never needed validation from people you didn't even know. So to join a numbers crew specifically for validation always felt weird to me. And maybe that's more of a personal thing, because as a person, like, not even graffiti related, I never needed anybody's validation. So maybe that's more so the reason why I never really messed with numbers crew. But let me know your guys' thoughts on that in the comments down below. As far as crews in general, I always just felt like I can paint with the people I want to paint with and not have to be in a crew with them. And maybe that comes from, you know, growing up with Demer as my mentor, where Demer was in Walnut's crew, he was in VS crew, he was in this crew and that crew and 80 other crews, and I wasn't in most of them. So, like, I never felt as if I needed to share a crew name with somebody in order to actually paint with that person. We can just be friends and have a good time on a wall. There didn't have to be anything more to it. And that isn't to say that I wasn't in crews. I certainly was. I was in way too many. You guys know, if you have any experience in graffiti and you're like 5-10 years in, you know the crew names, they rack up real quick at one point. They really do. Most of which I can't even recall because I never even put them up. They more so met me, they were like, hey, would you put my crew name up? And I was like, sure, dude. And then I never put it up, which makes me seem so mean. But, you know, it's what happens in graffiti, alright? It's common for that to happen. I'm sorry. And it's like the more crews you get into, the less you put up, right? When you're first in graffiti and you start getting all these crews under your belt, you really want to put all of them up. And you try, you know, a lot of us, we really do try. We put up a lot of these crews just in order to, you know, be a part of this community. And then you realize as you get more experience that you really don't need to. That's not what makes you part of the community. So then as a result, you stop putting up as many crews and you start putting up just a select few. And maybe you put up one depending on who you're painting with, and you put up another depending on who you're painting with. Because at the end of the day, what matters is, and as corny as it sounds, it's true, what matters is the more so the friendship friendship and the bond that you guys have when you paint together? Do you trust the person next to you? Or do you enjoy their company? Those are the two big questions you have to ask yourself. A numbers crew oftentimes doesn't have either of those two things. And if you do have that friendship and that trust, then you really don't need a crew in order to denote that anyway. And that's more or less why I don't really take crews too seriously nowadays. Like, why I don't really care about being in a crew. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on this, because I know we're gonna get a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different experience levels, and I want to hear all of it. But dudes, check this out. If you want to learn more about graffiti, check out the best how to do graffiti tutorials right up here. And we got even more graffiti content down here on the bottom. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys around next week.